Did you do a job interview with Japanese rugby a couple of weeks before the World Cup? And if so, what was the thinking?
I don't know what you're talking about, mate. Firstly, I'd just like to apologise to all Australian supporters.
It's not good enough, so I deserve whatever I get.
Well, I came back to Australia to try to help. Take full responsibility for it. No, I don't think I'll be going out in Leon. I don't think it'll be a good place for me tonight. At the moment, I'm not giving much help. I was put in this job to turn Australia around.
Worst World Cup defeat, by statistics anyhow.
Oh, and you don't have a bit of a dig, mate? It's always good to kick a dead body, mate.
With Australia, it looked like it meant more to you.
Yeah, no, it's probably right, and it was like a job where I was so desperate to do well for the country. I had to feel as though my level of commitment was going to be matched by the people who were running the game, and I didn't feel that was the case, so we called all bets off, mate.
Right, I'm with the great Eddie Jones in your hometown, home city of Tokyo. What a beautiful place.
Yeah, no, it's a good city, mate. It's an interesting place, as you can see, because you've got 20 million people here, and you could be in a place now of in a jungle, couldn't you?
It's crazy. We've absolutely loved it, like our whole time here, and it's almost like now we were just talking about it. It feels like it's the epicenter of rugby and its growth, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here and I'm with the head coach of Japan, but with the athletes that are here, with the coaches. We're up in Kobe, the setup that they've got there, it really does feel like this is the place to be.
It's interesting coming back for having been out for 8 years and seeing particularly the development of League One, and the clubs now have gone from company teams. They were basically toys of the company CEO to fully professional teams. And you've got some of the best coaches in the world here. You've definitely got the best players in the world here, and it's really evolving. But like any new competition, you've got to. The key is how do you keep developing it, and one of the things is for the national team to win. Like any country, national team wins, people want to follow rugby, and it's almost pure here. It's almost pure rugby. I think because the media is less invasive here, people can get on with just coaching and playing rugby. And I think, as in the Western world, rugby has become part of the big media picture, and it brings all the good things, but it also brings the pressure to coaches and players. I think you can see some of the players here, like particularly maybe Artie Surveyor. He comes out and he plays, and he just plays with a pure enthusiasm for the game. It's really good to see, mate. Yeah,
no, it's class. You brought up the media early, Eddie, early into this. I was going to talk about it later. And I'll be honest, I'm not just saying that because we're here. You could go back through the archives. I've said it, I've enjoyed as where I stand and the entertainment side of things of your stuff in the media. Yeah. Some other people will say it's been difficult. Like I've read stuff where you said it's actually been difficult for you at times, but you've seen the need to grow the game. You look at other sports and the media plays a central part to that. You said just then about like the Western world. Like how is your relationship with that now internally when you think sports, entertainment, media? Yeah,
well, I think the easiest thing in the media is to say nothing, and that takes a certain sort of discipline, but we need to keep the game growing. And I think sometimes you've got a responsibility to engage the media, and to engage the media, sometimes you have to be confrontational, and that creates headlines, and but it also creates news for rugby. I would have preferred to have a quieter way of doing it, but that's not how it turned out. So be it, mate.
Yeah. Be honest, did it affect you, that kind of stuff? Because I know you said it didn't, and I've maybe read a couple of things or small anecdotes where you referenced that it might have. Was there a part of you were like, oh shit, maybe a bit too much, or you wish that you didn't? Because that would affect anyone.
At times, yes, but it's been temporary, mate. You know, coming out of Australia, I felt a bit deflated about the whole thing, and obviously the relationship with the media didn't help that. You know, and in retrospect, I probably would have done it a different way. But then I look at England. I don't really have any regrets. You know, 7 years coaching England, and the end comes to it very rarely ends well, and it was always going to end in some way. And it portrayed as though I had a bad relationship with the media, but I don't think I really did. You know, the end bits are always quite sour. You know, how many players get to finish their career, you know, in a fairy tale spot? Not many, and it's the same coaching wise. So, you know, the longer you stay at a place, the more chances it's got of being quite a difficult ending, and that was always going to be the case in England. But I felt like, you know, my relationship with the English press was pretty reasonable. You know, at times it was a bit to and from, but that's all right. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think with the media, one thing I found quite interesting and quite endearing as well is your interaction with some of the players. So a lot of them, and again, this is something you talk about, if you drop them, they're not happy. If you keep them in, they're happy. You know, like Hask is a perfect example, your relationship with him. Yeah. But the way that you shielded like the team away from the media and the criticism, especially in England, was obviously intentional, right? You made the press conferences about yourself and gave great anecdotes that they could work with to take the pressure off. Was that intentional?
Oh, definitely. I think, you know, if I think about England, I feel the players there, the media there is the most intense in the world. You know, it's you're either the next best thing. You know, if you look at the example of Marcus Smith, you know, he was going to be the next best thing, and then as soon as he doesn't do well, there's another next best thing coming, and you know, he becomes yesterday's hero. And that for young guys, that's a lot of pressure. You know, that is a lot of pressure. So as a coach, you don't want to add to that pressure. You want to take away from that pressure. And certainly in England, I thought that was really important.
The stuff around Owen Farrell then, thickest of skin, captain, media and social media. What was your view on that? Were you surprised to see how it ended for Faz?
Well, that shows you how tough it is, mate. And as you know, you played with him. And, you know, I was lucky enough to coach him, and there was never a more tougher, motivated, single-minded player. And obviously, and then, you know, I didn't follow it, to be honest. I've only heard bits and pieces, and so I'm putting some stuff together, but I'm presuming that at some stage the social media really got into Owen's skin and affected him. And you can see how difficult that is when you consider the strength of his character and the strength of his love of rugby, that he had to basically say enough's enough, I need a break and go and play somewhere else.
Did you speak to Faz?
Yeah, we were keen to get him over here, mate.
Okay.
But he ended up going to racing, and I can understand why. But yeah, when you're a good player like him, you got options. And I'm glad to see that he's made a good decision for his family, and I'm sure he's going to enjoy his rugby at Racing.
Yeah. When you look back on your England coaching career, it's so successful at the beginning. Could you foresee what was unfolding, what was going to happen, the pressure, the expectation? What's your general evaluation of coaching England?
Well, I think, you know, the first 4 years we were pretty good, mate. Culminating in a World Cup final and I'm still trying to work out why we weren't close enough to being our best. You know, we're a long way from it. You know, and you think about all the different things that go into it. And that was disappointing. And then I reckon once you've taken a team to a World Cup final, it's so hard to start again, because you know that the one thing about it, when you get a team to a final in a World Cup, they're almost at their best age. You know, the only team I've seen really been able to sustain that is South Africa in the history of the World Cup. And we had to turn the team over, change the team a little bit, maybe change the way we played a little bit. And in the end, that just created too much instability, and we weren't able to have the consistency of success that England expected and wanted, and that was fair enough, and therefore we came to an end.
So with that final, you say you think about it a lot. How often do you think about it? Is that the one out of everything you've been through?
Probably is, mate. I think, did we get selection right? Tactically, I'm not sure there's anything else we could have done. And then it's just the emotion of the occasion, getting the emotion right. And sometimes you can over-prepare and sometimes you can under-prepare. And you're trying to work out whether you're over-prepared or under-prepared. And I was very conscious of the fact that having had the experience of a couple of World Cup finals, we kept business as normal. So I don't think we over-prepared. Maybe we left it under-prepared a little bit.
So South Africa have gone back to back. You've worked with them as well. Can you give us an idea from your perspective, having worked with them, but also being a top coach? Why are they so different? Why did they go back to back?
I just think they've got this incredible belief in their rugby. Like, to me, it's one of the most interesting stories. You look at, Japan beat South Africa 2015, right? That year they played, as they had been, played very traditional South African rugby, So they bring Alistair Kutsia, who wants to play a bit more stormers side to side. And for South Africa, it's not really their identity. They don't get the results they want. They chop Alistair, bring in Rassie, who goes back to dyed-in-the-wool South African rugby. Let's kick, chase, hit them, give them the ball, and then when we get a counter-attack, we'll go. And they turn into a World Cup winning team. And at the same time, they change from being a Super Rugby team to a URC team, which I think is a significant difference in the way they're developing their players. And then they cut their Curry Cup from 16 teams to 6 teams. So they went to looking after everyone to looking after the best. And then they've still got this school system that produces this endless stream of talented players. And I was there last year, I think it was, and saw the Craven. They have the Craven Week for the A teams, Craven Week for B teams, Craven Week for C teams. So everyone gets a chance to play in the national championship. And they're just bringing the players through, changed the way the domestic players play their rugby, and went back to their really strong identity of South African rugby. And it's been such a success. And I asked people, who was the major strategist? And no one can really say, because Rassie was definitely in terms of the team, but in terms of the development of the players, I'm not sure who did that. But it's been bloody successful.
Yeah, and it's been, look, from an outside point of view, supporting Scotland, they're in our pool. Scotland beating South Africa, just more to fuel the fire. But I've really enjoyed watching South Africa, like their journey they've been on, because they have these emotional touch points, which are so important in a contact sport. And going deeper into that and spending some time with Peter Steff while I've been here, and Damien, and watching this Chasing the Sun. I know you haven't watched that, but I'm all over it at the minute. But it's undeniable, them emotional touch points when you play a contact sport, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then the other thing I'd add to that, I did a little bit of work with Suntory, and when Chesson was there, and I can understand how they've been so successful. Like, he comes after the World Cup, and he's entitled to take it a bit easy if he wants to, and he could do it, but he trains 100%, last off the field, helps all the young guys, like meticulous in his skill work, absolutely meticulous, and wanting to get better, and they've really got this fantastic mix of players now, haven't they? You think about how South Africa has gone from being, almost Afrikaans side to now this natural mix of Afrikaans, English, South Africans, and you've got your players from the Cape and your black players, and they've all become one team now, and it's almost like the perfect picture of how we should live our lives. Doesn't matter where you come from, just get on with it. There's a purpose there. Let's do it as well as we can.
Yeah, and that's something that I picked up, and actually listening to you speak before, and something that you're big on and coming to Japan is being obsessed with that. And chatting to Peter Steff, like I was like, who puts the arm around you when the going gets tough? When these injuries are bad, and you're going through these down moments, which happens in sport. And he said his wife. And I was like, what about the coach? He's like, no, and they are very up and down. But like, trying to ask this question as a dad, also living in the UK, but more so because you've coached England, Australia, South Africa, you're here. Is there an element in parts of rugby sport and society where that kind of softness has now crept in? And I'm going to kind of carry on that point, because when I was with Peter Steff, he wasn't putting it on. He was a lovely man, but he was a hard man. From a farm, an affluent farm, one of 4 brothers, dad is out there grafting. There was no softness. You were like this man, and 28 tackles in the final, playing injured, nearly loses his leg, carries on. He's got his dad's hamstring tendon in his knee. And you look at, I'm there looking at, I don't know whether you like using these words like warrior and stuff like that, but there's no softness. And I'm thinking, well, there's no surprise that they've won a World Cup back to back.
Yeah. Look, I think, rugby's as you know better than anyone, it's a hard physical game, And I think the other part of that is that the team sort of has a psychological or a social profile to it, and you've got to know the profile of that team. Like, as you said about Japan, Japan's always had a reputation of being quite tough and quite ferocious, and not ferocious in terms of physical, but in terms of the way they approach their training. And I think that's still part of the identity. And I think you've got to make sure whatever team you coach is that you understand what they can be really good at, and where it's come from, what's the history of the team, what's the character of the team, and try to keep that in place, and at the same time look after individuals as well as you can.
So being here has been really interesting, because I've spoken to some of the best in the business, and something that I took away from it when I was chatting to Ardi Surveyor, and we were talking about the final, we were talking about Peter Steff, I was talking about the haka, the emotion around that, the kind of stuff that people want to hear. And when we were chatting about South Africa, and we spoke about the reason why, and that emotional driver, which is the kind of buzz phrase that I'm using a lot. When I asked him what the All Blacks one was, he didn't really know, which was quite interesting, because he was like, we're systematic. Brodie said the same, like, we're all about the system. It's all about like working hard, getting this right. And then he was like, maybe that's what we need to find, as in from the All Blacks. As an Australian coach in England, you mentioned the final. Do you think it could have been, is it the emotional thing that is the next dial to win something or not?
When you've got a team really dialed in, and they're together, and they're thinking the same, they're looking after each other. Someone's got a problem. Oh, Jim looked a bit down today. Owen, you go and talk to him. Yeah, no problems. And when that happens, and I think that can take a number of different forms. It can be coach-led, it can be player-led, it can be a combination. You can use other stuff. But when you've got that real emotional, like, togetherness, that's when your team plays tough all the time. And South Africa have got that now. I think you can't doubt that New Zealand's had a lot of that over a period of time. And I've got a great story about Ardi Surveyor. Like, our under-20s played Kobe B team a couple of Sundays ago, 9 o'clock in the morning, right? So it's like under-12s, right? At Kobe ground. And Kobe's got a game at 3 o'clock that afternoon. And Ardi's there supporting the young Kobe players, 9 o'clock in the morning. Like, how good is that for those young players? And just, Ardi's, emotional feeling for the club, is that he wants to give back to those young players. He wants them to feel like, he's caring about them, and those players remember that, and makes them work a little bit harder, makes them train a little bit harder, and then they become better players.
When you're looking at the best players in the world, like, who do you look at, Eddie? Who is the best? I know there'll be a few, but there must be one or two where you're like, my goodness me, like, that's the best we've ever seen, or one of the best.
Well, I think in this current generation, like, probably 3 players stand out to me. Like Surveyor, definitely. He came in as a light number 7 from sevens, and has turned himself into the most robust 8 or 7 in the world. And any team in the world would love to have him. And then I love Richie Mwanga. I love the way he plays, you know. He just wants the ball all the time, takes on the opposition, and he's shown a fair bit of courage to leave the All Blacks and take on a career in Japan. And I'm sure at some stage you'll go back and play for the All Blacks again, because when you look at rugby now particularly, because the players are so much better conditioned and have been looked after so much better, they can play for much longer. And he's still a young man at 29. And then I you know, and this is a bias because I'm the Japan coach now, you see someone like Cheslin Colby at 76 Ks, you know, can play against any team in the world and be effective. And it shows you what you can achieve.
Yeah, yeah. Did I read something or hear something, I'm not a reader so I've probably listened to it, around you thinking that the NRL athlete potentially tougher than union? They come from a different demographic. So I grew up on a council estate in Cov, just to get it out there. So I'm not privately educated. So I've got my views on humans that come from them walks of life. And when you play in the contact sport, we've gone through the kind of South Africa thing, the path that they've had to walk. Like the NRL feels like they're more of them. You know, the roadmen, you can call them, the grafters, rough.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're tougher, but like if you've got a jungle on one side and a zoo on the other, there's going to be two different tigers, right? And that's basically what it is. Most people are a product of their environment, and NRL is cutthroat, mate. Like if you don't perform, doesn't matter how good a player you are, you get cut. You know, and if I compare it to Australia in Super Rugby, so the problem we've got in Super Rugby, or not, we haven't got the problem. Australia's got the problem now, is that there's not enough competition for places. You know as a player, mate, when you're competing and you've got to keep playing well, you've got to keep performing, you do it. Otherwise you fall away.
Yeah, right. Should we talk a bit about Australian rugby?
Yeah.
If I may. How's your general feelings now that you've had a bit of time to sit back and stay out of the chaos and watch everything kind of unfold now?
On a personal note, I'm glad I did it. Yeah, I had the opportunity. Someone asked me, "Can you come and coach Australia before the World Cup?" 9 months. You're on a hiding to nothing. But why not give it a go? So I enjoyed that. I came away with a general disappointment about the state of the game, which I knew beforehand. But I thought there was an ambition and a real desire to make some big changes, just as we spoke about, like South Africa did, change the way we're developing talent there, but because of the circumstances that wasn't able to do so. You know, I made a decision to leave, and I really hope that over the next period of time that Australia can find its way, because we need a strong Australia. World Rugby needs a strong Australia, and they produce teams that can be, you know, the toughest, most exciting teams in the world, and we need that.
Yeah, well, you just look at their history in World Cups. You know, the Lions tour's just around the corner. What was a couple of things that you noticed where you were like, it's actually, there's bigger problems here than I thought?
You know, when you got one nutritionist looking after 6 professional teams, you know things aren't very, you know, up to date, and they're just lacking resources and resources at the moment, mate. Yeah, there's still good players there, but what's happening increasingly is that at the younger age level, the 14 and 15-year-olds, particularly those talented players, you know, they're all the ones who can run and pass and catch, they're being snaffled by rugby league. You know, so you're losing talent, and at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, you've got to have talent coming through. You know, you look at, I remember hearing someone ask John McEnroe, why, this is about 10 years ago, why was American men's tennis so poor? And he gave an explanation. He said, well, when the game went first professional, you know, everyone used a wooden racket. It was a skill game, so you didn't have to be a big guy. You know, but now they use power rackets. It's all about the serve and return, and they're all over 6'5". You know, and all the best athletes in America go where? Basketball, baseball, NFL. So they weren't getting the best athletes through, and therefore the stakes of the country drops. And at the end of the day, you got to find the best talent in your country and bring it through.
Yeah. Other sports, Eddie, that you take inspiration from?
When I was in England, I loved the football, mate. You can't beat the Premier League. Just the absolute, drama you have there, the competitiveness of it, the media engagement. I was lucky enough to get to know a few of the managers and the life they lead. I really enjoyed seeing and watching and going to watch training and see how the managers operate in the Premier League.
What managers? You can't just say just some managers, like they're legends.
I know Sean Dyche fairly well in Everton. He's keeping his head above water at the moment. We've done a few different things with Mikel Arteta at Arsenal.
They're doing all right?
He's doing really well. And then I was lucky enough to have a couple of lunches with Alex Ferguson, which was like
The GOAT.
Just in terms of his practical understanding of how to build a team, and the little words of wisdom, and he's a great storyteller, great bloke. We got him into the World Cup camp in 2019 before we went, and he spent a day there, spoke to the players, spoke to the staff, and he was just absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, because the microscope's on them, and there is the drama that follows football, right? Yeah. And maybe it's the audience and the tribalism around it. What advice did they give you then, like with managing that? Because everything you did was new to rugby with the media. The anecdotes, like pushing the buttons.
I had lunch with Louis van Gaal in the airport at Amsterdam, and he didn't know me from a bar of soap. Like, he had no idea who he was meeting, and he came in, he's beautifully dressed. And I always remember him saying to me, it was one of the most succinct ways of describing coaching. He drew a picture of a circle. He said, "This is how I want my team to play," right? And then he said, "But I get the players, then I work out I've got to play like this. So then it's the quickest way I can find them to play like that to their strengths." And it was just they're beautiful simplicity, because you think about those guys, they go in, they've got 3 days maybe they have a training session before they play a game. And they always get a job where the team hasn't been going well. Very rarely they get a job where the team's flying. So they've got to find that way of finding the strengths of the players and bring them through. And that's what you're always trying to do. And then try to keep the noise down on the outside. Like, how can you quieten the noise?
Which was the toughest media for you to manage out of all of the ones you've been in?
Well, the good thing about Japan, I don't know what they write, mate.
Can you not read Japanese?
Because I can't read it, and I don't worry about it. No, well, I think, as I said, I really enjoyed England. I enjoyed how desperate they were to get news. Because
you enjoyed that.
Yeah, they all come in. There's 8 or 10 of them, and they've all got their headline. They all got their headline in place.
What they're looking for, do you think? What did you feel they were looking for?
Well, they'll always be looking for different things. And one of the things I'd like to try to do, I quite enjoyed the game of trying not to give them a headline and give them a different headline. I quite enjoyed that. Australia there was too much fighting there, and that was my fault. I probably went too hard at them. But that was part of the deal there. Try to create some news about rugby.
Yeah, it felt like the Australia one, from the outside looking in, looked more emotional. There was more of like the emotional version of Eddie Jones. I see what you're saying about England. I could see you fueling the fire. Loved it. But with Australia, it looked like it meant more to you.
Yeah, no, that's probably right. And again, when I reflected, I probably didn't have as much control as I would have liked in the way I handled things.
With the media?
Yeah, and it's funny, you get to 63 and you think you should be able to do that. But it was it was like a job where I was so, and maybe it was desperate to do well for the country, that I allowed that to overflow to the media.
Yeah. So you were desperate then for
desperate for
Australia.
The country to do well.
Yeah, because it almost felt like they needed. I know Dave did a good job.
He did a great job.
He was in there as well, and I think, like you saying that, like the desperation. I think that's a good thing. I don't think people maybe saw that, because you go into the World Cup, you've got a tough pool, some big decisions made around leadership and all these different things. It did look tough. Yeah,
it was just too unstable, mate. We had change in personnel, change in leadership. We tried to change the way we played, short run up. If I had my time again, I'd still probably do it the same. And because at the end of the day, sometimes you have to make changes for the place to be successful. And I've got no doubt that Joe Smith will improve the team. And I think there's some good young players there that'll start to come through now. They've had, you know, a pretty tough experience, and sometimes the making of a good team is the, you know, the disappointment of having a bad campaign. Sometimes that's the thing that really drives you to be good, to be really good, you know. And the difference between being good and really good is so small but so finite as well, that, you know, as a player you have to make that decision yourself. You have to make, and then if you've got enough blokes who make that decision to want to train that little bit harder. Like, it was interesting, after the World Cup I took with Scotty Robinson, we took the Barbarians and we played against Wales. And at the end of the training session, the Fiji blokes, and this is a Barbarians tour, mate, you know, and you know, Monday and Tuesday, it's all go.
Yeah, Auckland grid outside with some tinnies in the middle.
And Monday after training and Tuesday after training, the Fijian blokes did extra fitness. Like, and that shows there's been a cultural change in that nation, in that team. And they'll start to have more sustained success because of that. I've just been back from Samoa, watched their under-20s play, and again they're looking fit, they're looking committed, and the penny just drops. And sometimes you've got to stir the pot a bit to get that penny to drop, and that was part of the job I had to do in Australia. So, like, I don't make any excuses. We didn't have success. That's my fault, but I do feel there's a basis there for them to go forward now.
Yeah, because you look at what they've got coming up, and this is probably what excited you as well. You've got the Lions tour, and then you've got a home World Cup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you must have looked at it and thought, if this goes well, and hopefully it does for you, then you've got these massive incentives. Did you think that far in front or not?
Like, you know, to coach against the Lions is one of the best experiences in the world. And then they have a home World Cup in 2027. But I had to feel as though my level of commitment was going to be matched by the people who are running the game, and I didn't feel that was the case. So, you know, we called all bets off, mate.
Yeah. Where does that leave Australia now? Joe Smith's obviously there, brilliant coach. Do you think the Lions is too soon for them to do something at home?
Well, they've got another 24 months. You know, on the back of if the bulk of the World Cup team then continues on, then you've got a team together for 3 years. And I think whenever you've got the right group of players together for 3 years, you start to get some consistent change and consistent performance. So, yeah, I'll be touch and go, but I think they could come through.
Yeah, I think they've got good players coming through.
Okay, yeah. But again, you know, the talent base is being eroded by the NRL. But, you know, the Brumbies are still doing okay at Super Rugby. Reds have improved a bit. Waratahs are up and down, and Force and Rebels are, you know, a bit up and down as well. But at least there's just a bit more consistency coming through.
Yeah. And what about the Australian public? Like, their ambitions, I'm sure, when they think, all right, we've got a World Cup at home. You go back to 2003, I know didn't win it, but in the final, and you said it, I've been at World Cups.
Yeah.
Builds the hysteria, doesn't it? Like the love of the game.
Yeah.
Have they got a real shot or not? Or do you feel like the South Africas, England's, All Blacks, the France, the Islands have just gone too far now?
Well, I think with Joe there, and if he gets the right support and they've got a really good high performance manager now, Peter Horn, that I think they've got a chance. And, you know, Australian fans are like everywhere in the world. It's like here, mate, you know. Japan doesn't win test matches, the crowds in League One will drop down. You know, they like winners, everyone likes winners. So, and they'll come if Wallabies start winning, Super Rugby starts winning, the crowds will come back.
Yeah. Listening to you talk about rugby, speed of the game, Chesley and Colby, Richard Mwanga, Ardie Savea, there's a common thread of fast and loose and attacking style of rugby, but the set piece, as we know, the Springboks, that's what beat England in the semi-final.
Yeah.
That's what beat England in the final as well off the scrum. Like, have you got the profile of players in Japan for the front row, for the glory?
We're going to have to develop it. We don't have them at the moment, but I think we can develop it. And I've just been out to Samoa with the 20s, and we actually won the Pacific Challenge. We beat Fiji, Tonga, Samoan, and there's some good young players coming through. So it's a combination of keeping what we've got and bringing some young guys coming through. And we've got to scrum smart, you know. On our ball, we should be able to have 1 second scrums literally. On their ball, we've got to scrum for a long time because they're going to keep coming. And if you can scrum at a low enough height together, then you can make them a bit disinterested for a period of time. And in 2015, 2019, I think Japan showed they could do that. So there's no reason why we can't do it.
Yeah. It feels like you're happy here, Eddie.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to the end now, mate. So
The end of what?
end of the coaching career. So, and I feel like I can give something back here. And you know, Japanese rugby's been kind to me, so it'll be good to give something back.
Yeah. When you look at it and it's all said and done, then if you are coming towards the end, how do you look at it? Do you look at it with affection? Do you be like, fucking hell, this has been stressful?
Oh, I just think, mate, how lucky I've been.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I played in the amateur era, played club rugby. I remember at the end of my career, I went over and played a year at Tigers, and I worked for Matt Poole's father's furniture removal company. So I was building desks, putting desks in offices during the week, and then played for Leicester on the weekend. And to think then, since then, you know, I've basically coached, well, you know, this will be my 5th World Cup coming up. I've basically coached professionally since then. It's been fantastic, mate. Loved it, absolutely. And you know, the big part of it is the players that you coach and to see that the guys, you know, some of the guys that you coach, particularly the naughty ones, that then come up to you and they're your best mate. Because at the time they think, why is this bloke saying it to me? And then they work out, well, maybe it would have helped me a bit.
Yeah.
So that's the nice part of it.
That's been class. Eddie, thank you so much, mate. You're a gent. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It's been
Thank
wicked.
you.